I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Equatorial Guinea to introduce an address by the head of state.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, Excellencies, it is a distinct honor to introduce His Excellency Obiang Mbasogo, President and Head of State of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, to listen to his pre-recorded statement to this 76th regular session of the General Assembly. Thank you very much. Your Excellency Mr. Abdullah Shahid, President of the 76th General Assembly of the United Nations. Your Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to begin by congratulating His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Shahid of the Republic of the Maldives on his election as President of the 76th United Nations General Assembly. You can count on the support of Equatorial Guinea. By the same token, I wish to express my gratitude to your predecessor, His Excellency Mr. Volkan Bozkır, from the Republic of Turkey, for his magnificent work. I would also like to pay tribute to the United Nations Secretary General for his work to lead our organization, his re-election to the position, and his efforts in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. I am pleased to participate once again in this important United Nations forum, which every year provides us with the unique opportunity to address and to seek solutions to the major problems and challenges that affect us both individually and collectively. For almost 2 years, humanity has been tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had devastating effects, unprecedented in recent history, and that has affected more than 200 million people and led to the death of almost 5 million. These figures speak for themselves and mean that we must all together seek lasting solutions to this crisis and draw useful conclusions. Time and experience have shown us that common problems are better tackled together. We already have the tools and the know-how to be able to overcome this test and to triumph. With the awareness of the origins of and damage wreaked by the pandemic, we must now focus on how to face the post-COVID situation, or on how to live with the pandemic. The world is at an unknown crossroads, as COVID-19 has affected all areas of our societies. And the severity of the health and humanitarian crisis has taken a toll on our economic, financial, and social structures. As indicated by the theme of this 76th General Assembly, we must build resilience to recover from COVID-19 and to do so in a sustainable way, responding to the needs of the planet with respect to people's rights and while at the same time breathing new life into the United Nations. In this sense, the international community must examine what happened in depth. It must study its causes, address it, and take action to prevent similar situations recurring in the future. Or, at the least, to ensure we are better prepared to be able to mitigate their impact. We must design economic and social recovery programs and ensure that no country is left behind. The benefit of and respect for people's rights must be prioritized in this process. The United Nations must play a leading role in humanity's efforts to recover from the pandemic and from its collateral effects. In this regard, I would like to suggest the possibility of holding a broad-based international conference, a conference to address the causes of the pandemic, its consequences, and how the weakest countries can be helped. And that because the effects of the pandemic have exacerbated many of the endemic problems and challenges already afflicting our countries, such as conflict, extreme poverty, and migration, to name but a few. Indeed, the pandemic has heightened the economic crisis caused by the fall in the price of hydrocarbons on international markets. In the particular case of Equatorial Guinea, we have designed and rolled out policies aimed at diversifying our economy and, at the same time, trying to revitalize other sectors that are not as vulnerable nor as subject to fluctuation as hydrocarbons. These efforts suffered a considerable setback with the accidental explosions that occurred in Bata on the 7th of March this year. These explosions caused more than 100 fatalities, numerous injuries, as well as substantial material damage. And this substantial material damage had a very adverse impact on our country's economy. Indeed, the situation forced us to review our priorities and our economic outlooks. It also imposed a serious financial outlay that was not initially foreseen. In this regard in particular, I wish to highlight the solidarity and the humanitarian spirit that our people showed and can be proud of. This was supported by international aid. I take this opportunity to thank all those countries and international organisations that came to our aid. I'd like to refer in particular to the International Monetary Fund that has just granted us emergency assistance support to mitigate the consequences of the pandemic and of the explosions of the 7th of March. Equatorial Guinea intends to continue making headway in line with the financial programme agreed with the International Monetary Fund. Mr. President, security and stability are essential to achieve progress and to make the world a more just and prosperous place. It is therefore very important that the international community join forces to rid the world of conflicts and their root causes. We should be joining forces in the pursuit of solutions that benefit all of humanity. In this context, I take this opportunity to congratulate the governments and the political actors in Libya, Guinea-Bissau, and the Central African Republic for their efforts to restore peace and stability. Equatorial Guinea is a sovereign state that does not interfere in the internal affairs of other countries and that expects its national sovereignty to be respected and for there to be no interference in its own internal affairs. Equatorial Guinea promotes international cooperation based on mutual respect, peer-to-peer relationships, and mutual benefits. We believe in the centrality of the United Nations, in the structural way of seeking solutions to the problems that affect us all. In addition, we are staunch defenders of the principles and purposes emanating from the United Nations Charter. Notwithstanding this, the United Nations must be reformed, not only to guarantee its own existence and prove its usefulness, legitimacy, and acceptance, but rather to represent a much more effective instrument for coordination and collaboration to promote and strengthen cooperation with regional organizations, in our case, with the African Union. In this sense, reform of the Security Council remains urgent, and that even though this process faces incomprehensible opposition from those countries that benefit from the current status quo. In light of these conditions, Africa cannot renounce the Esselwini Consensus nor the Sirte Declaration. These reflect Africa's legitimate aspirations and common position. Equatorial Guinea, as a C10 member of the African Union, will continue to defend what it believes to be fair. We note with great concern the dangerous tendency of some countries to impose foreign values on other countries without taking into account their history, culture, traditions, and priorities. Democracy is a good form of governance, but it should not be imposed without taking into account the idiosyncrasy, history, and traditions of peoples. Mutual respect for diversity is the cornerstone of the peaceful coexistence of peoples. In almost all of my speeches to this General Assembly, we appeal and we try to draw attention to the situation of growing instability and insecurity that our Central African sub-region is experiencing. This is a sub-region in which transnational organised crime is threatening us and manifesting as piracy, where the Gulf of Guinea has become an unstable area that threatens the existence of coastal countries and international maritime traffic. This in turn exacerbates the economic crises facing our countries. This issue therefore deserves global attention, as was the case in the Gulf of Aden, since here too the interests of the global economy are at stake. An international event to address this situation in depth is very much required. Terrorist and mercenary activity continue to pose a serious challenge to our countries. As in previous years, and with greater persistence this year due to the delicate health situation afflicting the world in general and the Republic of Cuba in particular, Equatorial Guinea is requesting the lifting of the economic, financial, and commercial blockade imposed on this kindred country. A blockade that has wrought enormous damage on the noble Cuban people. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, guaranteeing peace and security on our planet feed into the achievement of our aims for comprehensive development with unity and solidarity, harmony, and the strengthening of our cooperation. And it is in this spirit that I wish our discussions great success. These discussions are aimed at making the world a better place for present and future populations. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President and Head of State of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea for the statement just made. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kiribati to introduce an address by the Head of State.